Bhagvan, how do I stop the mind that tortures me all day? The young man asked with a trembling voice, as if the question had not risen from his lips, but from some ancient wound within him. The hall was silent, the afternoon sun slanting across the stone floor of Arunachala, and Ramana Maharshi lifted his gaze with the same stillness that had once swallowed his own fear of death at the age of 16. He looked at the questioner not as a person looks at another person, but as space looks at a ripple, and with that unhurried gentleness that made even the most tormented pilgrims fall silent, he said, "First find out to whom the mind appears." The man blinked, as if this reply had not answered anything, and yet something in the tone with which Maharshi spoke, calm, matter-of-fact, as though describing the position of the sun, made the entire hall lean closer. Maharshi had said this countless times, not out of repetition, but out of clarity. For him, every question about suffering returned to the same golden thread. Discover the one who claims to suffer. He once explained to a devotee that the mind is like a thief who sneaks into an empty house. As long as you believe someone lives in that house called I, the thief appears threatening. But if you look closely and see that the house is empty, the thief loses all power. To whom does the thought arise? He would ask. He never asked this to confuse. He asked it because, in his own awakening, he had discovered that the I, to whom fear appeared, was itself a phantom. The man, however, did not yet understand. He said, "Bhagvan, I have tried to watch the mind. It does not stop. It torments me with memories, anxieties, desires. When I try to still it, it rebels even more." Maharshi nodded, as though the young man were describing the natural heat of fire or the natural roar of the sea. "The mind," he said, "is not a thing to be stopped. It has no independent existence. When you search for its source, it vanishes." He explained this once to another devotee by pointing out that darkness cannot be pushed out of a room. Only light is needed. Similarly, the mind's movements cannot be forced into stillness. But if you turn the light of attention toward the I sense, the restless waves lose their force. He gently tapped his own chest, a gesture he often used not to indicate the physical heart, but the spiritual center he referred to as the heart, the source of all mentation. "The mind rises from here," he said. "If you sink your attention back into its birthplace, the mind will have nowhere to rise from." He recounted for the gathering how, during his own awakening, he never tried to stop the mind. He simply faced death so completely that the false I, the one who fears and desires, was exposed as a mere thought. The real self, the silent and unchanging awareness, remained. "That which exists cannot die," he would say. "That which dies was never real." The young man's breathing softened. "Bhagvan, but how do I go to the source? How do I look at this I?" Maharshi smiled faintly, as he often did when someone imagined that the self was a place to reach or an experience to enter. "You are already the self," he said. "You need only stop imagining that you are anything else." He mentioned what he had told many devotees, that self-inquiry is not a doing, not a struggle with thoughts, not a war against the mind. It is a simple, honest turning inward. Whenever a thought arises, whether noble or terrible, ask, "To whom does this arise?" The answer will come naturally to me. Then inquire further, "Who am I?" Not verbally, not philosophically, but with a feeling attention that sinks back toward the watcher. If this is done sincerely, the thought loses its momentum because the ego that powers it is being questioned at its root. He reminded the room of an instance when a distraught seeker had cried that his mind was too impure, too scattered for inquiry. Maharshi had said gently, "It is the mind that says it is impure. If you discover the mind's source, where is impurity?" He was not dismissing the seeker's suffering. He was dissolving it by pointing out that all suffering depends on a first assumption that there is a separate me who is being tortured. Without that assumption, thoughts cannot bind. Even painful thoughts are merely clouds passing through the same open, unchanging sky. The young man sat down slowly, and Maharshi continued speaking, not as a lecturer, but as a man speaking from a silence that was more real to him than the words it birthed. He said that the mind becomes torturous only when we give it authority, when we believe that every thought is a messenger carrying truth. "Do not attend to the content of the mind," he said softly. "Attend to the mind's owner." He had once given a powerful analogy. When you trace a river upstream, you find it begins as a subtle, almost imperceptible trickle. Likewise, when you trace the ego, this sense of "I am the body, I am the mind," you discover it is nothing more than a fleeting thought rooted in ignorance. But the pure I am, the simple sense of being, without attributes, without stories, that alone is real. A devotee in the back asked, "Bhagvan, when I try to inquire, I get lost in arguments. I don't know how to look for the source." Maharshi turned to him and said, "Who is confused? Find that one. The moment you seek the thinker, thinking stops." He had said this many times, and always with the same unwavering certainty. The ego cannot survive being examined. It is like a shadow that disappears when you walk toward the lamp. He leaned back against the wall, the mountain Arunachala rising behind him like an eternal witness. Maharshi often said that Arunachala itself was the silent guru, the embodiment of the self. Today he added, just as Arunachala stands unmoving while clouds pass over it, so too the self stands untouched while thoughts come and go. You are the mountain, not the clouds. He spoke slowly, each word soaked in a silence deeper than the syllables that carried it. He said, "You need not fight the mind. You need not improve it. You only need to know that it is not you." The young man, who had arrived trembling, was now listening with the stillness of someone who had been given not an answer, but a doorway. Maharshi noticed the shift and said one more time, with extraordinary tenderness, "Do not fear the mind. It is only an appearance. Turn inward. Ask who is the one that suffers. Hold to the sense of I, without adding anything to it. The mind will dissolve into the heart on its own." And as the hall grew silent again, it felt as though his words were not merely instructions but a transmission, a gentle guiding hand leading every listener back to the quiet center from which Maharshi himself had never once departed.
Like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Eternal Life.